What is up, everybody? Scott here, back for another episode of the Daily Fill. And this week I'm serving up gold right to you. Last week we were talking about confusion. Everyone's been there. I gave out the definition, the Latin definition. It was confunder. And basically what that meant, I'm still butchering that pronunciation, by the way. What that meant was that you mix all of these things together to create something new. I had the analogy or metaphor that it was like a cake. You put all these ingredients into a bowl, it just looks like this soupy mixture of blah. But you put the cake in the oven, all of a sudden you have this beautiful and delicious dish. Today, that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about that process. So I got some fantastic feedback after posting that lesson where I briefly brought up how to break through it, and I said you need to research, you need to study, you need to analyze, and then you practice slow and all that stuff. And I got questions on like, well, what do you mean by research? Or what do you mean when you say study it? Like, what do you mean when you say analyze it? Like, just everyone brought forth a lot of questions, and they were great questions. It made me think, okay, maybe I need to either do more podcasts about a particular topic or just explain these things a little bit more thoroughly. But before we get into that, please head over to all of our social media sites and give us a like at Drummers I Like on Facebook, Instagram. Where else are we? We're on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to us on YouTube. That's where this video is going. I do have a video for all the listeners out there. We are posting videos with this. And actually, for this lesson, it's going to be very beneficial. I will try to be descriptive as possible, but I do have a whiteboard behind me. And I am going to be showing things. I'm going to show two things right now really quick. One is going to be a rudiment. The second is going to be how to figure out how to read a particular rhythm, or just how to, get used to reading a rhythm. Okay, so we're going to start with a rudiment, all right? And with this rudiment, I just have eighth notes written here. The rudiment we're going to use is a paradiddle. So it's right, left, right, right. We're just going to stick with that. Now within this paradiddle, you have a few different things happening. If we have an accent on the first stroke, paradiddle, 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 paradiddle. Where a lot of the issue with paradiddles comes in is that a lot of people don't know that that first stroke, even though it's loud, it needs to be a downstroke. So this is part of the research part. Okay, to play a paradiddle, the first stroke is a downstroke. Well, what if I don't know that? Okay, research it. Go to YouTube. Go to YouTube, type in how to play a paradiddle. There's tons of videos showing you how to play a paradiddle. There's a lot of videos showing you how to do that. So I would watch that first. Okay, I'm going to go to youtube.com. I'm going to watch how to play a paradiddle. Because a paradiddle is pretty simple, just the sticking alone, but how to really get into playing it so you can play it fast, or you can play it really cool on the drum set, whatever, you would have to do some research. The next thing I'm going to do is study it. Okay, I said downstroke. Whoa, what the heck is a downstroke? Well, actually there's 4 types of strokes. There is a full stroke, which means it starts high and then ends high. There's a downstroke, which means it starts high and ends low. There's a tap stroke, pretty self-explanatory. You just tap it, so it starts low and ends low. It's a very soft stroke. And then there's an upstroke. You start low and you end high. That's also a quiet stroke. So we have 2 loud strokes, full and down. Then we have 2 quiet strokes, tap and up. Now a full stroke is basically you have a loud stroke and then another loud stroke is going to follow that. A downstroke prepares you for a quiet stroke, so it's a loud stroke getting ready for a quiet stroke. A tap stroke is just a tap stroke. It's a quiet preparing for another quiet. And then you have an upstroke, which is a quiet stroke preparing for a loud stroke, right? So this is what I mean. I would sit here and I would figure out, if I went and watched, I can guarantee you would go to a YouTube lesson on a paradiddle, and someone would say the first stroke is a downstroke. From there, you would have to do research. Okay, well, what the heck is a downstroke? And I'm pretty sure if you typed in, what is a downstroke on drums, you would find a video talking about full, down, tap, up, the 4 main stroke types. So there we go. Now we're researching it. Okay, now we're going to analyze it. We know the 4 stroke types. So we only have an accent on the first stroke, which means the rest of those strokes need to be quiet. So how are we going to get... So that means, so we have a right, left, right, right. So the first stroke, that first right, is a downstroke. Okay, so we have a downstroke. The left is going to be a tap stroke because it's not being played loud. Actually, I take that back. The first left, my apologies, that first left stroke after our accented right hand stroke is actually an upstroke because it's going to get ready for the next sequence in your paradiddle, which would be left, right, left, left, or anything that just comes after. It doesn't always have to be an upstroke, but if you're going paradiddle, paradiddle, right, left, right, left, left, that second stroke would be an upstroke. Then we have our right, right. Those 2 strokes would be tap strokes because they just need to be quiet. So this is what I'm talking about when you, to research, you're probably going to go to YouTube or you can go to Google. There's so many resources you can use and figure out how to play something more efficiently. Then after that, if there's any questions that arise from that, you would research that even further. Next is you would analyze the information that you just learned and you would analyze the rudiment that you're trying to learn. So we went, how do we play a paradiddle? They showed us and they brought up a downstroke and tap strokes and we were like, what are those? So then we went and we researched what are those stroke types for drums. What the heck is an upstroke on a drum? So we went and we researched that. Next is we put that information onto the paradiddle to see how we need to play the paradiddle, the actual physical motions of playing the paradiddle. So that's one way you can break down a rudiment. It's just go research it, then you're going to analyze it, and then you're going to study it first. So here's something when it comes to study. What I like to do is I will just stare at it and then maybe recite what I need to do. So I'll say like downstroke, upstroke, tap, tap, down, up, tap, tap. And I'll say it before I start playing. That's key. You want to say it a few times before you play. That way your brain understands what the heck you're about to make it do. Then I'll pick up my sticks and I'll go down, up, tap, tap, down, up, tap, tap. And I would just sit there and do it really slow. I probably wouldn't even do it that fast. I would just do it as it comes. I'd be like down, up, tap, tap, and then down. And I'd make sure that downstroke matches the other drumstick. That way I know both sticks are low. And then I'd say up, and then tap, tap. That's how I would go about it. I would do it stupid slow just so my body can get used to it. Next is breaking down maybe how to read a particular rhythm. And we're going to look at that right now. This is actually a solid example from Syncopation by Ted Reed. So on here we have an eighth rest followed by an eighth note. Then we have a quarter note followed by an eighth note, followed by a quarter note, followed by an eighth note. So what I would do is if I saw that and I didn't know how to count it, the first thing I would do is draw eighth notes above it. If you don't have room, just get a separate piece of paper and write it out. So here's what I would do. This would be my whole process. Pretend this was in a book, and now I'm going to write it on a separate page of paper. I would first start with writing out the most important subdivision, which in our case, we were primarily using eighth notes and quarter notes, but they were syncopated, meaning we were adding stress to parts of the counts that were, not common. It's not 1, 2, 3, or 4. We're adding stress to the upbeats. We're not adding stress to the downbeats. So the first thing I would do is say, okay, well, the eighth notes is the primary subdivision that I need to understand. So these eighth notes, I'm going to write 4 groups of 2. That way I can see all of them. Then above that, I would write out the counts just above it. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. I would write it all out. Then I would write out the exercise underneath and make sure everything lines up. So this can look a little bit confusing. So now I'm going to draw arrows to the points that might confuse me. That way I understand which rhythms are taking up what. For instance, we have a quarter note that begins on the an of count 3. So I would draw an arrow saying it takes up the an of count 3 and count 4. And then we have our eighth note, which lands on the an of 3. So let's go through this whole pattern. We have an eighth note rest on 1, just like I was saying before, followed by an eighth note. Then we have a quarter note, which takes up both 2 and the an of 2. Then we have an eighth note that takes up the count 3, followed by a quarter note, which takes up the an of 3 and count 4. And then we have an eighth note on the an of count 4. Next, what I would do, so this is the research and study part, right? So let's say you're like, I don't even know what the heck eighth notes are. Tell you what. There's a video on YouTube for that. Type in, how do I play eighth notes on drums? There's a video lesson, tons of video lessons for that. So if you don't know even how to play eighth notes, go type it in on Google or on YouTube and you'll find a lesson telling you about that. So there you go. There's a research phase. I don't even know how to do that. Okay, go research how to do that. Next is, okay, analyze it, which is what we did. We wrote out the eighth notes and then we put the counts above them and then we wrote out the exercise that we're working on. And that's going to allow us to see where everything lines up. Then the next part would to be, okay, let's take this really slow. And here's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to say the counts that the exercise lands on. So we have an eighth note rest on 1. So we're not going to say 1. But we have an eighth note on the and. So it's going to go and. And then we have a quarter note on 2. So it would say and 2. Then we have an eighth note on 3 and a quarter note on the an of 3. So we would say 3 and. And then we have an eighth note on the an of 4. And. So we'd say and again. So the whole thing would sound like this. And 2. 3 and. And I'd stop and I'd do it again. And 2. 3 and. Then what I would do is I would count all the eighth notes out loud and I would clap the exercise. So I'd say 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. That's all I would do. You would be surprised that just these simple little steps will help you master something super quick. Even if you're learning like some fancy chop or some crazy advanced rhythms, this process helps you a lot. I was learning a piece in college by John Cage, and I actually wrote out a piece like this on a big poster board, and it looked like some kind of thing, like a calculus problem, because I had all these subdivisions that I was moving back and forth between, and then I had all of the syncopated rhythms for those subdivisions written underneath. That way I could process it and I could see it. If you listen to one of my earlier podcasts about great practice habits, writing it out, transcribing it, is a great practice. And this is an even better practice, writing out what you're trying to do and then writing the exercise below it with the analytical stuff up front. It helps your brain see it, it helps your brain process it, and that information gets absorbed much quicker, and you can master it faster. And for me, I'm all about efficiency. I want to master things quickly, but I want to master them correctly. I don't want to spend time learning it wrong. I want to spend time learning it correctly. Even if I have 10 minutes and this takes me 6 minutes, this is 6 minutes well spent, and it's 100% more efficient than just sitting there trying to play it and just guess. Okay? So this is what I do. I research it. I go to YouTube. I go to Google. I might find some other things that I don't know about, maybe the different stroke types we talked about with the paradiddle. I might find out that, you know what, I need to learn a little bit more about rhythms before maybe getting into some of this stuff, maybe go back to some basics or even more basic exercises. I then, from there, I study it and I put together a analyzation of the exercise where I have everything broken down and written out. And from there, I just do it really, really slow. So this is how you break through confusion. I really hope this helps you. I guarantee it. Actually, no. I guarantee this will help you. And if it doesn't, contact us and you can set up a free little 10-minute coaching call, and I will make sure that you understand how to do this by the end of it. This works for anything you're doing. This is how you break through confusion. Break through confusion by researching, studying, analyzing, and practicing it very slow. Thanks for joining me. Like I always say in every single episode, I really appreciate all of my listeners. I wouldn't be anywhere without you guys. I freaking love all of you. If you have any questions, you can send us a message on Instagram, Facebook. You can go to our website and email us, info@drummersilike.com. And thank you for joining me this week. I hope this helps. Actually, I know it will. Just put it into practice. Put it into practice. And I will see you next time on the Daily Fill. Take care and have a great week.